All right, so let's go ahead and have ourselves chat about sensation. We're going to talk about four things: the type of receptors and their names, referred pain, sensation, and perception, as well as a fourth, more of an FYI type of thing of different orders of your sensory neurons. Now, first off, let's talk about sensation versus perception. Sensation is just the ability to sense what's going on the outside, whether it be temperature, pain, pressure, sight, hearing, sound waves, anything that we sense with our body is a sensation. How we understand it or how we perceive it or what does it mean to us means perception. It means what does it all come together? It's sort of like with being touched. One way you're being touched is this touched and being tickled and all that stuff, and it's a one pleasurable experience, you're laughing. But when you try touching yourself, you don't even get a chance at making yourself giggle. But it also, another way to look at it, if you're getting touched by a spider, that definitely doesn't feel like a tickling laugh ha-ha type of thing. It all depends on how you see it. Your body sees yourself trying to tickle yourself, and it doesn't really laugh because it knows it's you. If it's another person trying to tickle, then it's funny. And if it's a spider that's trying to, well, walk on you, then it's definitely not funny, and it's going to kick in some responses in quite a few people with fight or flight. In rats, this is also the case. This is an FYI, by the way. They have been shown to have a laugh response of their own. They'll come after a hand to get tickled. And if they're in a playful environment, they love doing it. They actually put probes in this rat's brain to see where it lights up, and the pleasure centers are lighting up in these rats. But if the rat is scared or nervous, those locations in the cerebrum aren't lighting up that correspond to laughter. That's the same way that we kind of work out. It depends upon how we perceive it, depends upon our situation. So each sensation has its own modality. Sensory modality, that's like touch, pain, vision, hearing, tasting, temperature, all that stuff. And each neuron that senses one sensory modality only senses that sense. If it senses pain, it only senses pain. If it senses vision, it only senses vision. It can't do multiple. It can only do one. Now, we can divide these sensory modalities up into general senses or special senses. What that really means is, well, general senses is, perhaps it'd be easier to explain special senses before we talk about general senses. Special senses are the things that, well, they are touch. Well, no, I lied, not touch. They are sight. They are equilibrium, hearing, smell, and taste. So 5 senses. The rest of them are considered general senses. So these general senses could be somatic in general. Somatic just means, if you remember, like neural body, soma meant body. So these are bodily sensations. So tactile, thermal, where are you at, aka proprioceptive, visceral pressure, what's going on the inside? Are you feeling cramps, chemicals? Do you have too much oxygen? Do you have too little oxygen? Do you have too much carbon dioxide? Are you too acidic? Are you too basic? A lot of people call me basic. I wonder why. Is your muscle stretching? Are you nauseous? Are you hungry? Do you have a fever? Did you get in the chills, hypothermia? Now, the best way to go ahead and just describe what we're going to do is just use this chart as a basis. We're going to start off right here at the top, the microscopic structures. Each one of these little categories tells us something new about your senses, or your ability to sense. So the microstructures, you have 3 different things that can hang out with the dendrites, the parts that sense and will convey a signal. You could have the free nerve endings. This means that the dendrites are just bare. Usually it's like temperature, pain, stretching, proprioception, with the sense of where you are, your arm is in space. You got encapsulated endings. Not really a cell, but more of like an adaptive type of thing. It's just associated with that nerve ending, those dendrite endings, to help it sense what it needs to sense. So like, for instance, pressures. Neurons that usually sense a type of pressure will have an encapsulated ending. Then you got the neurons that are with some type of a special sensory cell that has like a super amazing structure in it that requires it to be in a cell and be monitored. And that could be, and a lot of your special senses, except for smell, has this special sensory cell, some type of special sensory cell associated with it. Now, I did mention the free nerve ending, that it has temperature, tickle, itch, some touch, some pain. You don't need to know that for this class. Just know that since it has the basic outlay, it probably has more of the basic feels for it. Encapsulated, again, that's more of that pressure and vibration, with the sensory cells, the special senses being needed, a special cell being needed to use for a special sense. All of these transduce. That's the special word right there, transduce or transduction. It's that process of sending a sensory, some type of stimulus or a pulse or graded stimulus throughout the nerve until it finally achieves an action potential, and that sensation is sent or transduced down this sensory neuron. Let's move on to receptor location. So you got, I'm going to go ahead and just point out a couple of things right here, since they're all grouped together right here. Exteroreceptors. When you think when you're looking at these ones, think of it as your home designer. You're like, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and check in the exterior. When you're saying exterior, you're referring to outside, but then you go, oh yes, the exterior looks rather nice. Let's go ahead and enter into the interior. Yes. Forgive me if you are a home designer or have a family member that is a home designer. I'm just being silly. Anyways, interior, just remember, is inside. So an interoreceptor would be inside. The one that would throw us off a little bit is the proprioceptor. Proprio, if any of you have a Latin-based language background such as Spanish, Italian, or, well, hey, Latin, proprio means self. So these are self receptors, and these guys are responsible for sensing where you are or where that part of your body is in space. So exteroreceptors, a lot of different things that they can be as an exteroreceptor. So this is stuff that you're going to sense from the outside. This is like temperature on the outside. Are you in water? Do you feel pressure, pain? Is something poking you? Do you see light coming in? Do you hear noises? Can you taste? Can you smell? That type of stuff. Interoreceptors, you're sensing things that are going on inside, your own conditions. Do you have enough oxygen? Do you have too much carbon dioxide? Are you too acidic? Too basic? Is there a lot of stretching going on inside in your intestines? Is there stuff gurgling around? Are you have an infection? That type of thing. And then the proprioceptors, again, where are you? That deep philosophical question, simply answered by saying that there are receptors in your muscles, tendons, and joints. So why sense inside? Well, again, you want to make certain that you are hunky-dory inside. If you go out of homeostatic imbalance and you're not sensing that something's wrong, then you're going to have some issues. Now, proprioreceptors, here's a nice little picture that helps really show what's going on here. You'll notice that there are some receptors innervating and circling around these muscle spindles, as well as in the tendons, and this one doesn't really show it, but it would have been helpful to see some of these proprioreceptors labeled here in this joint. And those proprioreceptors just tell you where you are, which makes sense that they'd connect it to the parts that move. Muscles, if they contract or relax, these proprioreceptors say, hey, we're extending our arm. It can tell us, hey, we're bending at this joint. Hey, there's stress in this tendon. This is what's going on. And that information combined with another sense will tell you your orientation in space. Finally, we got the sensation, the types of sensation, types of stimulus detected. So mechanoreceptors, think mechanic. A mechanic does what? He is grabbing, sensing, moving physical parts around. Those mechanoreceptors are sensing mechanical changes. Pressure in your finger, you're touching something, you're feeling vibrations. Osmoreceptors sense body fluid osmolarity. A really easier way to say this is how much water do you have in your blood versus salt. If it's really salty, you don't want it really salty, you want it just right. You want a saline solution almost. Thermoreceptors, hopefully you can pull that one apart and see it yourself. Thermo just means, what's one thing that actually measures temperature? A thermometer. So a thermoreceptor is the thermometer of the body, whether it be an extero or interoreceptor. Chemoreceptors, could be inside or outside. They're sensing some type of chemical change or some type of presence of chemical, depending on wherever. Photoreceptors, only one that type. The best way to remember that a photoreceptor is just remember that when you take a photo, you are capturing light. So photoreceptors are capturing light or sensing light. And then nociceptors are the pain sensors. And these are the ones that you can thank for all the pain that you feel in life. Now, pain is a good thing. It tells you you're in a dangerous situation. You're getting hurt. We need to get you away before it hurts you more. But in some cases, it's not just that wonderful. We'll talk more about that here shortly. So let's talk somatic sensations. Here they are in all their wonderfulness. Remember that somatic means body. These guys right here are all about the sense of touch. Really, the point of us having so many of these different types of receptors is just to really be able to capture everything that the sense of touch can do. The sense of touch is much more complex than most of us realize, and a complex feel such as just a texture and how pliable, aka squishy it is, or how rough and hard it is, requires a lot of the works of all of these sensory neurons and their associated structures to be able to tell us what we are sensing or what we are touching. Pain receptors are also intermixed throughout. This one I would recommend remembering. So you got a lot of somatic senses. Again, pain, proprioception, thermal, and then you got the tactile. Here are the varying types of receptors. Notice that you do have some free nerve endings here that do temperature. You got some encapsulated ones. If you remember that my rule of thumb about encapsulated neurons, they sense pressure and vibration, and sure enough, this one down here senses high frequency. This one up here, low sensory. This one has a corpuscle and a root hair complex or plexus. The root hair plexus helps sense that something's on your hair. So if you have a mosquito buzzing around, you can thank the hair root plexus for sensing it when it touches down, as well as this corpuscle of touch, because it is so extremely sensitive to even the slightest onset or beginning of a touch that it could sense maybe just even a little small depression of about 0.1 millimeters. That's really small. So in other words, again, all these guys together form complex touch. You got the pliability, it tells you texture, it tells you how sticky, rough, smooth, what have you. If you put your belly up onto a jackhammer, it tells you how much it vibrates, that type of thing. Now, something else to know about touch that we won't be covering or is written down here quite yet is how distributed this touch is. So these sensory neurons are. In the hand, they're super tightly packed together. Which makes sense because you're touching a lot of things. You're interacting with your world with your hands. But your back, do you really need that many receptors? Do you really need that many sensory neurons in your back saying as much as you have in your hand? No, not really. So if you've seen those TikTok videos, if you've seen those social media videos going around where a person is drawing on a piece of paper on the back of somebody else, and the person that's getting their back drawn on has to try and duplicate it, you'll notice that picture that the person that's trying to duplicate it isn't doing a very good job, because the space of all these are so far apart that you can't really sense what the other person is doing or drawing on the back of you. You can sense that they're there. which that's important to sense that if something or someone is touching you back there. But do you really need to know exactness? Do you really feel around with your back? The primary somatosensory area you should hopefully remember from chapter 14 is that post-central gyrus, part of that parietal lobe. These little characters here are called homunculus, and they're just like, homunculus are like clay dolls that can be shaped or changed in different ways. This is depicting where a lot of that sensation, or a lot of neuroscientists have determined would, in general, these sensations lie. But these homunculus aren't super accurate for every single person because it changes and varies. So don't take this as doctrine. Now, we are finally moving on to our last subject, the somatic sensation of pain. You really have two different types of pain receptors. You got the fast one, which happens really, really quick, gets you out of there nice and fast. It gets up to your spinal cord, you have your reflex, you come back down. It goes, owie, that sucks. That was painful. In fact, it actually goes up to your brain and back. Sorry, the 0.01 seconds indicates that would be going up to the cerebrum, with the slow pain being chronic. So if you've gotten owie and it's there for a while, it's going to keep on, the slow pain is going to keep on saying that it's here, it's here, you made a mistake, or we need to fix this, or what have you. Usually the slow pain is down a type of nerve called a type C nerve, meaning that it's a very small diameter. Remember that a small diameter neuron or axon doesn't broadcast its signal as fast, and it's unmyelinated, meaning that it has a very slow broadcast compared to that saltatory conduction. You do have the deep somatic pain as well, which is associated with your skeletal muscles, joints, tendons, and fascia, as well as the visceral pain. Remember that visceral, if we were talking about a horror movie, when it says, oh, this is going to be visceral, you're going to be seeing a lot of guts. So a visceral pain refers to pain in the organs, or there's something going wrong on the inside that you can't really see. Problem is that a lot of these nerves or neurons that serve these different organs also serve a lot of your skin, and these nerves can't really sense where the pain is originating from. So it means anything along that nerve is going to get the sense of pain as well. So for instance, the heart is innervated by quite a few nerves, and if it has pain, by the way, this is a chart about referred pain meaning that there are parts of the body that hurt but aren't actually hurting. They're suggesting that there's some type of visceral pain. So the heart here, you could feel it in the left chest. You could feel it down the ulnar nerve here, or a piece of the ulnar nerve. You can also sense it in your jaws, in your neck, as well as in the back, right here on the upper back. Let's take another one that's really common here in New Orleans, is this liver/gallbladder issue, where maybe some type of gallstone is developed. They often will say, oh, my gut hurts right here. And then as a nurse, you're going to triage and say, okay, is there anywhere else that hurts? And they might go, oh, yeah, my right shoulder is hurting too, my back right shoulder, as well as part of a little bit of my back side as well. If they say that, then it's indicative, or it has suggestion toward, or says that there might be something going on with their livers or gallbladder. If you got a stomach or boo-boo, you're going to feel a pain right over in the region of the skin that's right above that stomach, but also in between the shoulder blades. If you got kidney problems, you see this nice yellow region. That kidney has a lot of nerves going on with it, and it hurts quite a bit all the way around. Ovaries, it's about the same region, just to the left of the right of that umbilicus. Small intestines hanging out here around the umbilicus. One region that hurts where it should hurt is that that appendix here at the end of that large intestine. It still hurts in this lower right quadrant. So that's where the origins of referred pain come from. So beyond this point, I had mentioned that there are some different types of orders to the sensory neurons. We don't really cover them here. We've already somewhat covered them a little bit in another, and for this course, we don't really need to know much. The only thing I am pointing it out for is because it's helpful for your future life as a nurse. It helps you if you're going to go into neurology, if you go on to emergency medicine or something like that, you can help explain what's going on. So this is Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. They're trying to figure out a couple of things that are going down on in the movie. I don't remember exactly the details. I just remember that poor soul has a lot to deal with getting a spear in his leg. So what happens is that pain can do one of two things. It can go up through this first order neuron, which can go up to the midbrain. It can go up to that brain stem, or it can go up just to the very beginning, or I should say, it can be both. It can go to a second order neuron, which can be here lower in the spinal cord or up here in the midbrain where it interacts. Now, the importance of this, hopefully you remember from chapter 13, if somebody gets their spinal cord broken right here, that first order neuron is still coming up, and it has its interaction with the reflex, and that reflex can come back down. But that signal never makes it up to the brain, whether it be a first order neuron issue or second order neuron issue. The third order neuron is where that second order goes up, interacts with the thalamus, and that signal is then relayed on. With that is pretty much all we need to really cover about that. That might be helpful for you in the future. Thank you very much. I hope you have a lovely day.